It is the Martha Zoller Show, and it is a really important day because we are talking about the issues of the day, and there's a lot of stuff going on college campuses. But I would remind you that it's not as big as you think it is. Social media makes it look a lot bigger than what it actually is. And I think that we need to be careful and keep it in perspective. And, you know, at the core of all of this, I believe, is that you've got things that are being filled in people's heart that are not led by God. And that if you do not have God in your heart, you're going to fill it with something you don't want. And Rich Rogers is joining me right now. He's the National Coordinator of Faith Engagement for America First. And we're just so happy to have you here today. How are you?
Good. I'm honored to be here, Martha. Good to be
So
here.
give us the whole title, okay?
I'm the National Coordinator of Faith Engagement and Senior Fellow with the America First Policy Institute, and I'm still part of the staff at Everett Free Chapel here in Georgia.
Yeah, and tell Jensen hello.
I will.
We appreciate him so much, and you know, the few times that we get to have him on the program, I got to tell you, he gives us a wealth of information that I get to refer to all the time.
Yeah.
So it's great, and I appreciate that. Look, faith voters are an important part of what is going to happen in this next election. And, there are people all over the spectrum on that. But shockingly, we're finding that a lot of faith voters are not registered to vote. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what's happening is not only are a lot of faith voters not registered to vote, those that are registered aren't voting nearly at the level that they need to be. Here in Georgia alone, there's something like I believe that the specific statistic is over 144,000 Christians did not vote in the 2020 general election, and that is just in Georgia. And so, what we're finding nationwide over the history of elections, especially in the last 20 years, is whoever has the most people registered in a state, be that Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal, they tend to win that state. And so amazing strides have been taken in Florida. Florida is now pretty much a red state, whereas you go back two generals ago, it was kind of tipping toward the red, tipping Democrat and even purple. But that is solidly in the red column right now. And it's because we're becoming so much more sophisticated in how we approach elections. Even if you go back 4 years ago, even at AFPI and all the different Christian and conservative-leaning policy institutes that were out there doing all the voter drives and everything else, it was all about getting as many people registered as possible. Well, 4 years later, we are so much more sophisticated. You're going to see an entirely different turnout this year in the general. We are able to target specific cities in the battleground states, and we know what those issues are for those cities. And so that changes our messaging even all across the nation, and especially in those battleground states. But Christians have to step up. Another really interesting statistic, Martha, is that in Georgia specifically, I can't say the specific statistic because it's not made public yet, but you would be amazed at the number of men that aren't voting in the state of Georgia. I mean, huge number of men that aren't, and I get that. I'm a man. You get busy. You've got the daily grind. You have the things that you're doing. But men have to step up and come to the plate. There's too much at stake.
And they feel like, and it's true, that we have been demeaning what they do for a long time.
Yes.
There's a young man that I have on a regular basis. His name is Pastor Justin Giboney. And Pastor Giboney is an African-American pastor in the urban area of Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to connect you two because y'all need to know each other.
Yes.
But he is a Democrat. He ran Democrat campaigns. Mm-hmm. He was a Democratic delegate to a convention. He has been involved in Democratic politics, but he had this pull that it wasn't enough, that he had this call, and it was a call to pastoring, but also that he thinks the Republican Party doesn't use the right language to talk about the issues that the urban church cares about, mm-hmm. and the Democratic Party ignores those issues that the urban church cares about. So he started this thing called the AND campaign, mm-hmm. which is really talking about how to talk about these really kind of conservative faith issues, but you might be across the spectrum of a voter.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You know, I lived in California when we had Proposition 8, This goes back to the first time that Barack Obama was elected president. And in that general election, Proposition 8 was on the ballot in the state of California, and that was to legalize gay marriage. And we're talking the state of California, which is a very liberal state. Proposition 8 won that year. It won. It was defeated in that they could not make gay marriage legal. The reason, after all the analysis, was because Barack Obama was on the ballot. And that translated into the African American voters and even the Hispanic voters, who, along with the evangelical voters, said, you know what, these aren't our values. You know, we may be Democrats. They were Democrats at that time. They tended to vote liberal, but when it came to those social issues, that did not line up with their social issues. The Democrats, they're saying they're very good at the targeting messaging. But what happens is they do the targeted messaging, and then they don't perform. They get in office, and then they go back to ignoring the black community, the Hispanic community. On the Republican side or the conservative side, it's just been, let's just take this one set of messaging and use it nationwide, and that is what's changing. That is, we are so much more sophisticated. Like I said, targeted messaging for the places where they're dealing with specific issues in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Maricopa County, in Arizona, in Nevada, in all these battleground places. They're not all dealing with the same issues. Well, we're now speaking to those issues specifically, and you have President Trump, who has a track record of making promises, and those promises happen. And so I think you're going to see a voter shift. When you saw President Trump go down into the heart of Atlanta there and walked into that Chick-fil-A, those people weren't about Republican or Democrat. They were about the issues that they're facing every single day.
You know, you're seeing a lot of kind of Reagan-esque, even though the style is not like Reagan was, okay? But this kind of shifting of the voter is what I'm talking about,
yes.
Where we've got working class men, black, white, and brown, have been told, this is something I'm very passionate about, Rich. They have been told for the last 40 years that what they do is not important, that they're not valuable, they're not needed, they're not, and the fact of the matter is we've got a real problem with the role of men, how they function in the home, how they are valued in the community. I get that for a long time it was all men and not women. I get that. And women, I love the fact that I've been able to break a lot of glass ceilings and I've been able to do all this kind of stuff. But I couldn't have done it without a supportive husband.
Yeah.
Okay. And he couldn't have done what he did without me, And so that's why these relationships, and it hurts me when you hear that people just aren't getting married anymore. They don't think it's important. They don't think they need it. But these relationships with God and with each other are really what are going to bring this country back together. It's not who we elect, although that's important, okay? But I tell people every day, you got to vote, you got to parent your children, and you got to have face-to-face conversations.
Yes, yeah. I mean, single-parent issues are what's killing the inner city as well. But, you're seeing those leaders start to step up the plate, and they're starting to address those in major ways. I saw... I got emotional. I saw a TikTok the other day where there was a school, I believe in Texas, where they said we have a huge number of children that don't have a father in the home. And they asked the community for fathers that would be willing to come down there and go through some orientations and go through some training to kind of stand in that gap. And they were flooded with men from the community. And this was an African American community, and that was so powerful. But I think we're seeing people start to step up in that way. I think the issues that were considered taboo, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about single parent issues in the inner cities and things like that. They've surfaced, and people are more interested now in like what's true and what works, not so much in like what party are you, what affiliation are you, what works, because they're tired of dealing with what doesn't work. And you're seeing leaders step up to the plate and do that. And I just think this election is a chance. I mean, when have we ever seen an election in our lifetime where the line between one side and the other is never been more clear? Christians get accused of this thing called Christian nationalism.
I don't even know what that is.
It's trying to discourage Christians from being active in the issues of the day and politically active. But I mean, it's not political to look at some of these issues. So you either believe in abortion on demand or you don't. You either believe in open borders or you don't. Crime is at critical levels. You have DAs that won't prosecute, no bail and catch and release. You have boys and girls bathrooms, men and women's restrooms, transgenderism run amok. You have children identifying as animals, puberty blockers, drag shows in libraries and elementary schools, homelessness out of control, billions in Ukraine with zero accountability, chaos in the Middle East, a betrayal of our greatest ally, Israel, a weaponization of the Justice Department, inflation out of control. I could sit on so many issues.
Well, and I want to talk for a minute about what's going on right now with this explosion of anti-Semitism that we have seen that I thought was put to bed a long time ago. I was living in a dream world. And then we've got this college campus situation where these young people are trying to equate what they're doing to the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was a bunch of working black people that really put their lives at risk by gave up stuff to do it. Now, it wasn't that there weren't some students that joined along, but it wasn't student-led. It was working people that had had enough, that was tired of paying the same amount for the bus ticket but being forced to sit in the back of the bus. That's what that was. That was real people that had real problems, that had things. So I think it's a lack of God in the world that these things rear their ugly head from time to time. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. It's a lack of God, but it's also professors filling students' heads with ideas and thoughts that aren't their own. It's groups of students on campuses that may feel passionate about something, and then in swoops these Soros-funded groups that I mean, look at these protests. You're seeing the same tents all across the campus. They're funded. They're professional agitators. There's professionals, and so you have universities with professors that have these extreme points of views. When a student comes out and yells, "I am Hamas," surely they have no idea what that means to say "I am Hamas." What that means for a woman who's in Palestine, and so it's a lack of God, absolutely, but it's also being replaced with ideology like an anti-America, a colonialism training, saying that everything we've ever done is bad, that things are so much better everywhere else, especially Europe. It's false teaching. And when God is not at the center of what that teaching is, then false teaching takes that place. It fills that void. And I do believe that these students, they're more being manipulated than they are being liberated. This isn't about freedom of speech. This is about literally manipulating the mind of a young person into believing things that simply aren't true. And that's what's happening.
So, Rich, how can people get more information?
Well, if you want to get more information, you can follow us at AFPI. We have there, and there's also the Faith and Freedom Coalition. You can go to their website, which is ffcoalition.com. But get involved. Go to your local places where you can be involved. Talk to your representatives that are there in your towns. But the biggest way you can get involved is register to vote. That's the biggest. We all have a voice, and when we collectively, our voice is overwhelming. And I'm talking about the conservative community, the Christian community.
Rich Rogers, thank you so much for being with me today.
You got it.